Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Eddie Marcus again, spokesman and advocate of basic human rights for all people. I want to thank you so very much for giving me at least this your time. I want to speak to you on some things that I hope will be beneficial for every last one of us who are viewing this video. I was awakened this morning listening to the news programs that come on Sunday mornings. I'm sure many of you are familiar with them. And they were talking about the politics of the day. They were talking about the president. They were talking about those who seem to want to identify the problems of the president, and those who want to smooth out and say that the problems of the president are the problems of the people and the president has no problem. And I'm thinking about how these issues are so at odds with one another. And it just makes you want to focus and think about all around you. You got people with different perspectives on every subject. And some of these subjects are maybe not that relevant, but some of them have to do with the lives of people, the situations about whether they live or whether they suffer or whether they die. And yet you got these various issues that would justify everything that is being done. And you got issues and voices that would tear down everything that is being done. And it makes you wonder, I know for me, I grew up in a situation that reflects the same things that I'm just expressed here, and I'm sure you have as well. One thing that I saw this morning on television that was very moving, I saw a commercial about the babies of various ethnicities. They were white, they were black, and you know they had to put a Latino in there to make it cover everybody. And these kids were having a good life. They were just playing with each other, having fun. And I'm sitting there thinking about all of the babies of the world. And I'm thinking about the parents of these babies and how these parents dream and hope that their babies get a chance to live, some of them perhaps a life as well as the life that the parents have lived. But many are just wishing that these babies get a chance to live a better life than the life they lived. And it makes me want to focus on things that seems to be important and should be important to everybody. Whether it is or not, at least to me it seems like it should be. And I'm reminded back when I was a youngster and what you were exposed to. I remember going to the churches all the time, had to go to church. And I remember people talking about God and Jesus and love and all of these kinds of things. I heard people getting so emotional at times that they would even start fainting. Many of them would start dancing and going through all kinds of changes, and they claimed at that time that they were filled with the Holy Ghost and burning with fire. And I'd watch all these emotional acts, and I'd wonder what was really going on. And especially when a time came by when I was able to recognize that there was a lot of suffering going on in the world. And they told you about how Jesus came along to save the sick, to deliver people from their oppression and stuff like this. And it made it seem like Jesus was such a wonderful individual, a caring individual, that Jesus had it going on. And so most of the children, having listened to these kinds of things, they would always aspire, always say that they want to be like Jesus. And regardless of all the other people that came about in the Bible that was talked about, Jesus ranked number one. And I would sit back and I'd watch all the things that were going on in the world, and I would wonder, where is the expression of this Jesus that is constantly talked about? Where is the expression of this love that is talked about in the churches? And then one day, I recognized a man who was in the world during that time who talked about Jesus too. But he went around saying that there were injustices, that they had to be righted. And people that weren't in the church joined with them, church organizations joined with them, and they did wonderful things in the name of that spirit of love. And eventually he was killed like many others. And it seemed as if some little fig might have, they, they cemented it so he could say, well, this will accomplish this. And then everything went back to the way it was. I also remember people having to be so poor, the teenagers when they were in school, just in order to get change of clothes or clothes that looked decent to wear to school, they would have to go to college campuses when a athletic event was going on and break into the dormitories and steal clothes that were of the athletes. You know, athletes, if you go to college, you probably got access to something. So your clothes, many of them looked a little bit better than people who were chopping cotton and picking cotton. And so they would get their clothes this way. I even remember how this was so built into our system. So one day when I was in elementary school, I believe, we were having a May Day program. We didn't really know what May Day stood for. Like many people today don't know what it's for, but we do know that they celebrated that day. And so on that day, the celebration was you would have the platinum maypole and you have games and you bring some celebrity around who would probably do some tricks. It made everything wonderful. And this particular day, I decided that I wanted to do something special for a girl that I liked. Now, I'm just in elementary school. Why should this be on my mind? I don't know, but it was. So I knew I wasn't going to have any money. They had cheap stuff. You know, things were cheap back in those days. You can buy a hot dog for a dime. You can buy a Coca-Cola for 6 cents. And I thought about this little girl that I liked. And I wanted to be able to do something for her. I won't tell you. Her name was Joyce. I won't tell you her last name. But I decided that I was going to try to raid my grandfather, my great-grandfather that raised me that night, and see if I could find some coins, some money. So that night, I slid up out of the bed and I crawled to his bedroom and got his pants off the chair that he would hang them on, got his wallet out. And his wallet seemed to have been fat. So I called myself going to get $1. And I got that dollar. And having gotten that dollar, my mind said, well, look how fat this wallet is. You can get $2, he won't miss it. And ultimately get $3, he won't miss it. So I got myself $3 and I put the wallet back in his pocket, put his pants back on the chair, and I crawled back out, hid the money in my shoes. The next day I got ready to go to school. And when I got ready to go to school, I got away from home, dressed on my way to school, and I went in my shoe to get the $3 out. And I found out I had 3 20s, $60. So I had stolen not $3, but $60. My mind told me, well, if it was fat, and if you got 3, he didn't miss it. And if it's fat, he got 3 20s, he won't miss that either. So I went downtown to the Western Auto and spent some of that money like little stupid kids will do. But I went to school that day, and I bought hot dogs and Coca-Colas for myself and for that girl, and probably some of my friends as well. When I came back home, my great-grandmother asked me if I had seen any money, if I owned any money, and I tried to deny it, because I had hid the money that I had left. But I kept 50 cents in my pocket, so they're going to always send me to the store. I got something I can buy myself a Baby Ruth with, a Butterfinger, or a Butternut. That was a candy bar back in the days, great candy bar. They don't sell them anymore. And so when she said, come here, boy, let me search you, as I was denying this. And you know how kids try to be smart. I'm going to go, oh, I got nothing big, mama, I ain't got nothing big, mama. I'm going to take this 50 cents out of my pocket and throw it on the bed. But back in those days, those 50 cents were made out of silver or something. They made a lot of noise, and this baby hit the floor. And she said, oh, there it is. There it is. And so I had to suffer that. I can't answer the phone right now. So I had to suffer that one. And to make a long story short, I kept denying that I had the money. But my great-grandfather came in. I loved him. I always trusted him. He promised me that if I told the truth about it, he wouldn't punish me. So I admitted it. He didn't punish me, but he tied me up like you taking a hog and finna hang him, and made me naked. My grandmama beat the daylights out of me. I finally broke loose. I had to pray to God to help me get loose. And God had mercy on me, and the ropes broke, and I ran out. I said I'd never trust another person because I knew I would trust my grandfather, my great grandfather. But it caused me. He tried to make it up sometime later by buying me a big bike, and I liked it. But it always made me peculiar. It made me think about certain things. Now, the reason that I shared that with you is just to say some of the things that people who live in poverty have to go through. And I'm saying this how it shapes and forms the thought processes of the mind and how you have to and can deal with them or can't deal with them. And I want to use that because as I look at the world today, I'm a social scientist, and I think about when you hear the preachers on television talking, they talk about this, they talk about that. And in many instances, they say some of the same things, but in a lot of instances, they say things that are different. I never hear a preacher on television trying to put down the system. It's as if they say, allow those who got rule over you to rule over you. So we don't take issue with the system. There might be some preachers, but many of them don't. And I sit up and I look at people who have made decisions about what's right and what's wrong. And some of those decisions are reflected in the conduct that people are treated under. And some say, well, this conduct is appropriate as far as the divine is concerned, or if we respect the divine or not. And we call it socialism. And others look at it and say, well, that's not the right way, let's do it this way. And they call it communism. And others say, well, that's not the right way, let's do it this way. And they call it dictatorships. And others say, well, that's not the right way, let's do it this way. And they call it democracy. And if you stand back and look at the whole entire picture, in every area, you find that there are people at the top that's doing well, super well. You find that there are people who are doing a little less well. And still some doing a little less well, and some doing terribly bad. You find out that the actions of the one at the bottom and the one at the top basically are the same. The one at the bottom seems to have to break all laws to try to survive. They have to steal. They have to lie. And they get caught. And when they get caught, they go to jail. But you find that same activity taking place at the top. And when they get caught, if they ever get caught, it doesn't matter. It just goes like it's nothing. And you just ask yourself, what is this all about? What is the right way to live? What is the proper way to live? Because what we find in reality is that all people want to live. You think about those babies that I mentioned earlier. Their parents want them to live. They want them to have their dreams come true. They don't want anything to prevent it. And if there's going to be an activity, let it be something positive that would help bring that about. And I'm looking at all people, and I'm feeling that all people want basically the same thing. I see that everybody wants shelter. Nobody wants, like in Minnesota today, we got the worst snow pile up we've ever had in the history of keeping records here for the month of April. Nobody wants to live out in that cold. Nobody wants to be hungry. Nobody wants to be going to a shelter trying to get a meal or trying to get a pair of pants to put on. People want education if it can make them be better at it, whatever it is they choose to do. They don't want to have restrictions that say you can't get it because you don't have the funds. People get sick, every last one of them want to be able to go to the doctor. They don't want anything to prevent them from going to the doctor. When they got toothaches and they need a tooth fixed, they don't want something saying, well, you don't have any money. They don't want any of these things. So all of these things that I mentioned here, every human being on the face of the earth wants to have access to it when it's needed, wanted, or desired. And then all the other stuff, like the transportation and the school, the buildings and the streets, the infrastructure, all of these things that's cream on the top after all these other things are met. And you ask yourself, how can this be done? And then you look at everybody, you see that everybody have a gift. Everybody has something that they really want to do, that they are good at or can be good at with the proper training. And having indulged themselves in the creative process, all of the resources out there that are given. We don't have to give the resources. They're there in the earth, on the earth, above the earth, seen or unseen. And the talents that can pull these things forth, they are gifts that have come to the people. And the people are doing these things. Everything that we have available to us today are done by you, the citizen. And yet, not all people can access them. Not all people can benefit from them. Why? Because of money. Now, something tells me, as I see it, that the way that everybody can benefit from this is by everybody playing a part as they have done and recognizing the part that they play in it. Recognizing that the resources are a gift. They don't belong to anybody. Oil that goes in, whatever oil goes in. Fuel that is being used for whatever fuel is used for. Electricity for whatever it's used for. Television, telephones, computers for whatever they're used for. It's chairs, couches, for whatever they're used for. These resources have been given to us. The gifts are in the people. The people have used those to create all of this. So this, my friends, to me, makes everybody owners in everything that exists. And by them being owners, they should be able to access from that reservoir of these goods and services whatever they need, whatever they want, whatever they desire, because the principles have been put together, the Creator and human beings working together to do this. And yet and still it doesn't exist. You have preachers who will not take a stand and say that this is wrong. They'll just talk. And you know what? The richest preachers on the face of the earth are the ones who seem like, you know the story about Jesus when the devil took him up on this high place and showed him all of the things of the world that he could possess if he just bowed down and served the devil. And Jesus rejected it. And so rather than owning everything, what he got was the cross. And yet you find these here preachers out here, they're the richest, like they haven't turned their back on anything. The money's just flowing in. So it seems like the decision that Jesus made is definitely not the decision that they made. And the people go to them in droves. I mean droves. You've heard that the way is wide and what is that? Well, you know what I'm talking about. A lot of people going to be on it. A lot of people going to be on that road. And that gate going to be wide open so they can just come on in. That leads to destruction. Now, I don't know if that's true, but I tell you that's the way it appears to be. Now, what the end is going to be for these people, I've heard different stories that I can't bank on, but they say it's going to be really terrible. And that those people who stay away from that stuff are going to be led to life. But I'm asking you today, why is it that we have to go through this? Why is it? And then I say to myself, could it be because those who stand up for what appears to be right, at least in my thinking, are killed? Jesus, Gandhi, Malcolm, Martin, and so many others killed. Does this make it easy for people to just accept the world and the world's way? When you look at the President of the United States today, you see him standing up before you, the world, and lie to you just like some people lie to their children. And people justify their lies as, oh, it's nothing, don't worry about it, he's still a good man. And so the next thing you know, that this lying person can do anything that he wants to do. And I'm not just talking about him, I'm talking about all liars. Liars who have created pretexts to do crazy things and to get you bound in a situation where you will be willing to give up your freedoms that some people have decided that were very important, but you give them up because of some protection that you've been convinced that you need, when it's all a game. You don't need it. Somebody's using this to exploit you, but you don't know it, so you go along with this. So I find myself here today thinking about those things, standing here with my wife's robe. I was so into this thing this morning, I just grabbed the robe and put it on because I wanted to say these things to you, and I don't know how you're going to take it. But it seems that I must say to you, ladies and gentlemen, there's a way to peace and prosperity and happiness in all of our lives, and that every last one of us as human beings should recognize this because each of us want it. And we should ask ourselves, what prevents us from having it. I know we've been trained to think that we got it and other people are stupid, other people are dumb, we are entitled and they are not. We say hams, people were being punished. We find all kind of ways to justify the suffering of others in ways that says that we should be beneficiary of all of the good things. And yet we understand that thinking like this creates war. It creates crime and violence and terrorism and all these kinds of things. It seems as if we should be smart enough to take another look at this. Take a real serious look at this on this Sunday morning, as many of you are getting ready to fight this weather to go to church and listen to a preacher tell you about a Bible story. Now, I'm not trying to knock these Bible stories. These Bible stories are good for children. It sets something up in their mind for children. My 13-year-old daughter says to me all the time, Dad, things are going to be better, but you got to stop looking for the elders. You got to stop looking for old people and really grown people to do things. They're not going to do it. The change is going to come by the young generation. We're the ones that are going to make the difference. And the thing that bothers me about that is when I was her age, I used to say these same things. My generation, we're going to be able to do it. The old people have been brought up and taught by slave masters and have been masters. And so they don't really know the direction. But we're living at a time when we see change coming about. We can grab this, hug this, and love this, and let it grow within us. And we can make these changes. In fact, not only can we make it, we're going to make it. And here I am, ladies and gentlemen. There have been some advances in technology. There have been advances in a lot of things that's going on in the world except humanity. Humanity is at a at its lowest. And I am speaking to you today because of that fact. Now, I know I can't make you because of the ways that the people have said this system, and all of these systems to themselves are right. But in every situation, you find the same sufferings in all of these systems. Maybe if we could look back, if there was a way we could take a step back and look at all of these systems, we as individual citizens, if we could make a step back and look at all of these systems and listen at what we've been taught, listen what we've been trained to believe, and look at it, and we can see those things that are so similar in every system, regardless of where they're at, and see the outcomes of everything that we have been taught that was so wrong here and so right there. If we saw the effects of it, if we could do that, then maybe that would make an impression on us. But then we don't have time to really look and research stuff. We have to watch the game shows. We have to play video. We have to go to the sports events and keep our minds off things that's really relevant in life for the things that we hope will give us a little reprieve. The land that we live on was given to us. The bodies that we live in was loaned to us. The peace and prosperity and happiness that we receive in this is in our hands. It's in the choices that we make. And so I implore today to all of you who are listening to me to take a step back, for a moment, just take a step back and look at not only your situation, but the situations of others, and ask ourselves why. Why does it exist? What would I do if I was in that situation? How could I make it better? How can I make the situations of others that are suffering better so that it impact me in a positive way, so it will impact all of us in a positive way? How can I do that? How can I look at the whole world and see us being as prosperous as these preachers who are out here just ringing in the millions and getting out all kind of books and everything? How can we the people do that? How can we progress in that way? We might not have to write books, but we can just live and have a wonderful life. How can we do that? How can we do that? I implore you today, ladies and gentlemen, to give that a little thought. How can we do that? Thank you so very much for giving me this your time. Once again, this is Eddie Marcus, spokesman and advocate of basic human rights for all people. Bye-bye.